Hello and welcome to your 5th exam project video. Never mind, that was an animal that also happens to live in my office. Oh man. Anyway, so here we are staring at the Google chart gallery, and we're going to learn how to take all the data you've aggregated on your site and turn it into some nice infographics for your viewers to see. So let's start. So I've done a few little setup things. The first thing we need to do is in our index file, you have your main container here that contains your test. We actually need to make another one kind of at the bottom. So I've kind of done that on the bottom here. I should say main row, that's wrong. There we go, test row. So it's the test row, and I've given that an ID of main, which we'll need. And then down here is the score report row, which I've given an ID of score report. We need both of these things, so we should go ahead and put those into your index. All right. Now here's my read Google data function that we developed in the last video. Currently it doesn't quite do what we needed to just yet, but it does effectively loop through each row of the data table and then each column of the data table, which is nice. But we do need to do something with it. So I could show you how to do each one of these, but that's kind of a waste of time because you kind of already know how to do it. So let's do one that most of you have been asking about, which is like putting a bell curve in. And that would be this area chart thing. So I'm going to go ahead and grab their simple example. Always nice to have sample code to steal. Okay, now you'll notice that we can't just copy and paste this because we need to take the JavaScript portion specifically. So let's just we definitely need to link to the JS API. So let's copy that line and we'll put it into the index. You can put it like above your jQuery. Actually, no, it needs to be below your jQuery. It's fine. Okay. And then in your JavaScript, you can copy what they have here and just paste it for now. I'm going to put it, this is not where it'll live eventually, but we're going to put it down here just to look at it. All right, so you should be familiar with most of this. This asks the package to load. So we're going to go ahead and put that in the document ready function, which is up here, because we want that to load when the document's ready. We don't want it to load when Google data is read. That'll be too slow. The next piece is the set on load callback. We don't actually want this to run on callback, so let's not let it. Well, we don't want that to happen. All right, and then here's our draw chart function that's present in most of these. Let's see, we've got data. So here's the data table. It looks like with this particular chart, it had two different areas, but we only want one. So we can kind of just like get rid of the third column in each of these because we don't need it. So you can go ahead and just visualize it that way. Just gonna get rid of it. All right, so it's really an array of arrays with just two items in it, because you're just gonna have your year, or I guess your score, and then the number of people with that score. So that's fine. You could also do this as a histogram, which might even be better, but we'll do it this way because this is more complicated. All right, options we'll leave as they are, and then it says chart equals new.google.visualization.area chart into this div. We're going to need to set one of these up. So I don't have a particular design in mind, but let's go ahead and just set up fairly straightforward thing. Let's say we'll have two columns, one for the student score and one for like the chart showing where that ranks. So we'll have one div that's going to be a column of width 4, and then we'll have another div, and this is going to be for the chart, and we can call this one call it bell chart div. And then this one should be score div. So save that. And then instead of here, we can do document.getElementById, bell chart div. Bell chart div. All right, that should be good. And then finally, it draws the chart with the options specified. So here's our draw chart function. The only thing we're going to need to modify here is really the data table. So we're going to need to modify it in here. Why don't we set up a parameter in the draw chart div? We can call it data table. And we can create that argument in our loop up here and just pass it to the draw chart function and save ourselves some time. So now that this is kind of ready, I'm going to copy it and paste it outside of the read function. So it's all ready to go. And let's format it so that it makes sense with the rest of it. So variable draw chart equals function, just like that. And then we need to take this and move it over. All right, looking good. All right, so we need to create this data table right here in this loop up here. So let's see, this goes through each row, this goes through each column. For a bell chart to work, you need to kind of have a breakdown of the different grades students should get. So like 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, 100%. So it should be like grade, and this could be 20, this could be 40, this could be 60, 80, then we need one more for 100. Okay, and then this should be number of students who got that grade, or in that range. So maybe this should say like 0 to 20, and 21 to 40, and 41 to 60, and 61 to 80, and 81 to 100. Okay, so same thing though. We have grade range and the number of students who got it. So all we have to do is kind of store the number of students that got within each range here, and then place them into our bell chart. So we can figure out how to calculate that. Let's see. We need to calculate a student's overall grade based on each row, because each row is a test grade. So we're going to need to create a variable in the first level of our for loop. For variable, we can call it row grade. This is the grade each student receives on a row. All right, how do we calculate that? Well, for each answer, we need to compare it to the stored correct answer, because remember they're in order. So we need to compare it to the stored correct answer. And if they're equal, we're going to want to add 1 to row grade. So let's say if item to read is equal to, and it was correct answers, and this should be at k. And if that's true, we want to add 1 to row grade. Cool. All right, that makes sense. All right, now the next part happens after we've looped through all the correct answers, because remember, we need to store the number of students who have this particular grade. So after we go through all the answers, we'll have a row grade out of however many questions there are. In fact, we can go ahead and set that at the end. Row grade is equal to whatever it was. Bless me. It's row grade part over the number of total questions there were. So we could say correct answers dot length. All right, we want to filter that. So we can say if row grade is greater than or equal to 0, and row grade is less than or equal to 20. See what we're doing? We are setting up parameters here. Greater than 20, and row grade is less than or equal to 40. Row grade is greater than 40, and row grade is less than or equal to 60. row grade is greater than 60. Wow, this is tedious. Normally there's probably a better way to do this. However, since it's only for a few values, I am making do. But certainly not the greatest way. All right. All right, so now we know how to check if what their grade is, but now we need to store. Now, the variables that'll store the number of students who got each of these correct over all of the table probably need to be created outside of the loops. So let's say we have just 5 grades. Variable, we'll just say the lowest percentile is an F. So variable F grade starts at 0. Variable D grade starts at 0. So all these should start at 0, right? Because nobody's there yet. And how many are there? There are 5. And A grade. All right, cool. So these are grade counters. Neat. All right, so if they're between 0 and 20, let's give them an F. And then this should be a D. And then this should be a C. Don't forget semicolons. This should be a B. And this should be an A. Cool. All right, so that's what this section does. It calculates their percentage and then adds to a variable based on their percentage. Nice. The last thing we need to do is create this data table, which should be straightforward. We can just say variable data equals Google.visualization. I'm just copying their syntax here. Parentheses this. And then this, each one of these needs to be an array. So it should say grade students. And then the first thing should be, let's say this is an F instead of 0 to 20. How about that? And then the number should be F grade. And then we'll say D grade, C grade, B grade, and finally A grade. And then we can get rid of this because we just created that up here. And finally we can call our draw chart function using our data table. Let's call this data table right here. All right, then all that should work. Draws it into the bell chart div. Awesome. Let's just make sure it works before we do the final step here. So we need to re-upload our index. Okay, where did I put it? Is it in Q2? I think it's in Q2. Oh, nice and fast computer here. Wonderful. All of my one documents are loading. There we go, Q2. Oh, this is actually index 2, what I'm working on. So we're going to say index 2 upload. We'll just have to rename that to be index. Then we also need to upload the JS. As we can see, the computer is very fast. Good, my test.js2. Delete that. It's been like 3 days since I did this and I can't remember. All right, let's see if it works. Oh, well, there is one last thing. We didn't quite hide that last div, but that's okay. We'll take care of it. Right now we're just looking to see if it actually loads the chart, which I am hoping and praying that it does. I'm pretty sure we covered everything for it to at least be able to. This is nothing we need. Or is it? Oh, nice. We're getting nothing. I am not sure what's going on. Hold on, I'm going to pause this while I figure this out. Two things that you're going to need to do. I don't know why this was happening, but I just put the google.load thing from the document ready function. It was in here. I just put it at the top of the page. That would fix that problem. And then the last thing you're going to need to do is in the chart.draw, we had data. This needs to be the name of the argument here, and I didn't do that. But when you do happen to do this, it does attempt to create a chart. Unfortunately, it's just a blue line, as you can see. I think we can fix that with some pretty simple CSS and just make sure that the minimum height of that div is something. So let's go ahead and have we created CSS for this particular? I don't think we have a CSS file. Let's just cheat and do inline for now. How about that? Don't try this at home, but we'll say style min height is, we'll just say it's 400 pixels. And we'll re-upload that index page. Now you should put that in your CSS file, not cheating like I just did. I just want to make sure it works. No cheating allowed. Okay, okay, okay. Does it work? Look at that. Well, it almost works. Oh man. It almost works. Unfortunately, we only get a blank line here. Let's see if we can figure out what's going on. So obviously it's drawing the chart and creating the array appropriately, but looks like F grade and all that stuff. Looks like those aren't quite showing up. Maybe we should, maybe we should just log one of these beforehand. If this is 0, then we'll know something's wrong with how we're calculating them. And if it's not 0, we'll know something is wrong with how we're sending them. But in all honesty, we did the hard part correctly, which is even getting it to show up. So let's see. Inspect element. Yeah, see, that's constantly logging 0 right here on line 151, which is where we put it. Yeah, see, that should not be constantly logging 0. That should at the very least be adding to F grade. Apparently row grade is never actually between these two. And it's not working for any of them. Should we log what row grade is? Maybe row grade is just like acting up. All right. All set. Or not. Or come on, computer. There we go. Okay, let's try this. So now we're logging row grade to see its value. Not a number. Oh, well, there's our problem right there, huh? All right, so we have row grade should be something divided by the length of correct answers. That should work. Maybe it's that row grade is never being increased. But that, 0 divided by anything should still be 0. It should at least show a number. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, I mean, unless my math is that horrifically wrong, but it's not. 0 divided by anything is not a number. So, one more time, computer. One more time for the money. All right, here we go. Yeah, row grade. Oh, you know why? Because we never set it to be 0. It's got to start at 0. I can almost guarantee that'll fix it. We just declared it as a blank variable, but it's really got to start as 0 if we're going to do plus plus. because plus plus only works on integers, and if you don't set it as 0 to start with, it doesn't know that it's actually an integer. So we do have to do that. Okay. Fourth time's the charm. Hey. Okay. Well, this is great. It looks like everybody failed. Oh man. Nobody did well on this test apparently. Now that could be a fluke. Let's try getting all the answers right. I would imagine there's at least something where all the answers are right. But let's try getting them all right. Because if we get them all right, then it should at the very least populate that, you know. Yeah, see, I don't know if this is quite working correctly. Because it was 28 last time, so it's 29 this time. F grade is clearly working if it's greater than 0 and less than 20. Oh, you know why? Because this is a percentage. So this has got to be 0.20 and 0 point like this. Wow, am I slacking? That is a rookie error too. I hope you're sitting there at home watching this and like, oh, what an idiot. I sure am. Okay. This one is definitely going to work. I can feel it. I think I've said that like 6 times already. Well, to be fair, this is pretty tricky. All right. There we go. Much better. All right, so this is a good way of showing, you know, this average scores that everybody has received while they were taking this. And obviously this is not a bell curve, but if you had your standard bell curve shape, this would happen to show up that way. All right, so the only thing we need to do are some quality control things. Let's go ahead and do that, because the chart absolutely works. And that's how you can make any chart. That's pretty straightforward. So what I want to do is I want to hide score report until we're ready to show it. So in our document.ready function, which is right, where'd it go? Here it is. Let's do a little jQuery thing for score report. And jQuery is nice. You can just do hide. And I bet you can say once we draw that chart, or before we draw that chart, we want to show it. But we also want to hide the test div, and that's main. Okay, jQuery is neat because you can do a lot of the shorthand stuff. This just is like document.getElementById right here. And .hide and .show are 2 ways to hide and show things. Kind of makes it easy. So we definitely want to do that. Let's also display, remember we have that other place over here. We didn't give it an ID, but we have another place for like where their total score could go. So we'll say this is total score div. How about that? Let's also display that. So we can display that probably here, right where we display their row grade. So we can say total score div.html is equal to your score, and we should say plus row grade plus %. And that'll put that information in there. Cool. We're hiding, we're showing. All right, that's some neat quality control things. Let's make sure we upload our index and our JavaScript. There's our JS. Here comes our index. Here comes our index. Jeez, this computer. I can't even. And we'll reload. All right, so everything should be as normal until we finally complete it. And then the whole test div should go away, and it should be replaced by our progress report. There we go. All right, so apparently I scored 0.4%. We'll obviously, fix that math error and some standard debugging things that I would expect you guys to be able to do, but that one's pretty straightforward. That should be like row grade times 100, right? So it's a percentage. We'll put that in parentheses to make sure it happens first. And then, this would be styled a little differently and things like that. But there you go. That's how you put this together. So, this is a pretty basic overview of every feature you'll need in your project. You guys all have a lot better ideas than to just put a little bell chart here. This would need some styling too. But the point is, the process by which you go through that, we've covered in these 5 videos. And it's definitely one of the more difficult things you'll probably, in all honesty, have done in school up to this point. This is not easy whatsoever. But the nice thing about this is once you get this up to your classmates and you see their data start rolling in, honestly, it's a great feeling and it's totally worth it. So I hope to this point you've enjoyed, and I can't wait to see your finished products. And, Happy New Year, because at this point you're probably watching it in the new year. So there you go. And that's it for the tutorials on your exam project. Take care.